This is the Tuesday of MAPS testing week, and I am going to go ahead and do a video to cover your science for today. We're starting a brand new unit in science that has to do with animal classifications. Now, I know a lot of you told me that you were really interested in animals. So in your science materials from K-12, you should have gotten a book like this. Yours might look a little different, but it should be something about the classifications of life. They look differently depending on which version you have, but they all have the same information in there. So you might want to pull this book out to have as a good reference guide throughout this unit. This book does have some really great pictures in it, some great photos. It goes through all of the basic information. So it's a really good reference book to have out and handy during this unit. So for today, you are going to need your interactive notebook pages for, if you're using the ones that are already completed, which honestly, for this lesson, I would advise using the ones that are already completed. There's a lot of writing to do. So you can grab the ones that are completed. I sent one email that has all of the completed files in it for this week. So just take a look, and the date on those I put up on the top, up here on the top. So you'll need the ones for Tuesday. I believe there's 4 or 5 of them. So 1, 2, let's see here. Okay, so there's several, but you can see just on this one alone how much writing there is. So you might want to use the completed pages for this time. These are a little different than the ones in the past. There's a lot of vocabulary that goes with this section. So just be patient as we're learning the vocabulary. It will take some time. You've probably never heard of some of the vocabulary before, so it's also a really good time to stretch your thinking and learn about some new things. So let's get started. The way we're going to do this is I'm going to just show you what I have in my notebook. And we are going to walk through instruction based on that and kind of talk through everything. And I'll show you how the pages go in, and then we're just going to talk through it. And then we'll do the same thing on Thursday for those pages. So let's get started. All right, so here I have my notebook, and here's how this one goes together. It's 2 pages, and it's they were both labeled for Tuesday. The top one looks like this, and you just cut on the black lines. You don't cut the dotted lines. And then the underneath one, you only cut on the black lines, so you just cut out that big rectangle. And then what happens is you're going to put just one stripe of glue right down the middle of this, and once you have these cut out, you'll line them up, and this is what you get. Little flippies, little flip-flops on each side, and you see the glue is underneath this. This is what's holding, it's kind of like the spine of a book, and it's holding it together here. And I have all of these are cut apart, and then I just folded them on the dotted lines. So that's how you assemble this one. So I'm gonna, and this is on page 18 of my binder, or my notebook. So let's talk through, what are we even talking about in this lesson? Well, we're talking about different ways to categorize things that are living. So if I were to, let's say that I were to take a battery, a phone, and let's say some germ juice. We call it germ juice in my house. First of all, none of these are living things, but could I come up with some categories for these to group them? Could I say something like, things that have that are made of plastic. Well, I could probably choose these. Ultimately, this battery really does have some plastic in the coating, but we're gonna be super simplistic here. I know that my phone has plastic around it for the case, and then this germ juice has plastic here in the bottle. I could look at these again. I could classify them based on their shape. I could classify based on their color. I could classify based on lots and lots of different characteristics. So that's what we have done with living things. We have come up with different ways to categorize things and classify them. That's our first vocabulary word here, is classification. And if you have the ones that are already done, I won't lie, it'll make it a lot easier. I had a really hard time squeezing all of the writing in here. Let me see if I can get the camera a little bit closer. All right, sorry. There we go, roller coaster ride. So classification is to put things into classes or groups according to similarities. That's the same thing I just did with my phone and the hand sanitizer. Think about other classes that we have. We classify living things. We call some things cats, some things dogs. Well, what's the difference in them and what's the similarity that they have? Why couldn't I classify a horse with a dog? They both have 4 legs. They both have 2 ears, 2 eyes, a nose, a tail. So why couldn't I? So these are questions that we ask as we're classifying things. So classification is our first word here. Then we're gonna skip over and we're gonna go from left to right here, and we're gonna look at the word taxonomy. A taxonomy is a branch of biology that's used to name organisms based on the groups and similarities. So this is actually a kind of scientist. It's a branch of biology. This is a kind of science. So taxonomy is a kind of science that you can study. And these scientists look at how different things are grouped, and they look at similarities, and they do also look at differences, because if you're looking at similarities, it's hard not to notice the differences. So that's what a taxonomy is. That is actually a branch of science. Okay, so now we're going to get into these 2 words here, domain and species. These 2 words we're going to use a lot, and I like that they're right across from each other here. Because they are kind of like, they're little buddies. Look at this. Oh, they're little buddies. There we go. A domain is a level of organization that groups organisms according to if they are eukaryotes or prokaryotes. Don't worry if you don't know what that is right now. But this is a really, really big classification. If you've ever played 20 questions, when you start playing 20 questions, or if you've even played that headbands game that I told you guys that I can't stand, when you start asking questions, you start asking big questions. Those big questions, such as, does it have lots of cells, or does it only have 1 cell? Those big questions like that, we call the domain. And we start grouping things based on the domain. So here we can look and we can say, for the domain, does it have 1 cell or does it have lots of cells? Because that really sort of starts splitting things up. And then we have the word species. And this is the smallest, most specific group of living things capable of reproducing. So you've heard the word species before. It's a way to group things, but it's a very specific way. So I know we're going kind of fast through all this vocabulary, but we're going to come back to this and spend some time with it. Now this person here, let's see if I can get my camera in here just a little bit better. Okay, maybe that'll work. Alrighty, so this guy is Mr. Linnaeus. He is the first scientist to come up with our main classification system. This classification system we call binomial nomenclature. Heavens to goodness, that is a huge, huge word that probably none of you know what that means. Binomial nomenclature. You guys are going to learn what this means very quickly because it's really, really simple. This scientist started studying things and said, you know what? I can start splitting things up and giving them certain names based on the groups that they belong to. And this is what Mr. Linnaeus came up with. Binomial nomenclature is what it's called. And this is the system where we give two names using the genus and species to identify an organism. Have you ever heard humans called Homo sapiens? It's two words that go together to tell what part of the classification we are from. We'll keep looking at this. Now, what happens when an animal or a living thing pops up and we don't know what it is? There's this thing called a key. Think about on a map, you have a map key, and it kind of tells you what everything is. Well, this is called a dichotomous key. That H is silent there. So it's called a dichotomous key. And it says it's a series of paired statements that help to identify an organism of unknown origin. We're going to look at this. I actually have a really fun worksheet that talks about, we use a dichotomous key to figure out, I believe it's what the Pilgrims ate for their first Thanksgiving, and you would be surprised. But think about this if you've ever read one of those make your own adventure books where it says if you want to go to the mountain, turn to page 8. If you want to go to the beach, turn to page 12. That's kind of what a dichotomous key is. So you would have this key and it would say, if this living thing has one cell, then go to this. If this has more than one cell, go to this. So there's actually such a thing as a dichotomous key. All right, Latin. And under here it says the language for naming organisms when using binomial nomenclature. Latin is something that some of you guys are taking for a foreign language right now. But this is the language that all of these fancy names are based on. So if you've ever heard a dog called a canine, well, that's part, and it's not the letter K and the number 9. It's C-A-N-I-N-E, canine. That's a Latin. It comes from a Latin binomial nomenclature of a dog. So we'll look at some of that a little bit later. All right, now we have 6 different groups that living things are grouped into. And we're going to really focus on these 6 things down here at the bottom. So here we have, this is called Archaebacteria. This is Eubacteria. That E is silent there. It's called, or the E and the U go together, so it's Eubacteria. Protista, fungi, plantae, or plantae, it all depends on who's saying it as to how it's pronounced, and Animalia. My guess is that looking at this, you could probably guess what 3 out of these 6 are. That would be my guess. So some of you probably say, well, I think fungi, I think that would be like fungus. If you've ever heard that saying, there's a fungus among us, you're right. One of the major 6 groups is actually called fungi. And that G, it's fungi. Alrighty. So in this kingdom, and they call it a kingdom, so fungi has its own kingdom, which is a group, and it includes yeast, mold, and mushrooms. And it's in the domain, it's a eukaryote, which means it has, well, we're going to get to that in a minute. I'm not going to get too fancy here. But this group, this is one way that we can sort living things into the group of fungi. Some of you probably saw this one and said, well, that sure looks like the word plant. And you're right. We can sort living things into plants. These are also called eukaryotes, which you're going to find out what that means in just a little bit. And then the third one you might know would be the Animalia, which, yes, that's animals, and those are eukaryotes. So all 3 of these here, you already are familiar with. So let me back up over here to this Protista. Protista is unlike these 3. These 3 here are multi-cells. They have more than one cell in them. Mushrooms have more than one cell. Animals have more than one cell. Plants have more than one cell. Protista are single-celled things. And they can be similar to plants, animals, or fungus. And these cells do have a nucleus. So it's a one-celled thing that does have a nucleus. So this one is a little bit different from these 3 because the Protista is only one cell. Let's jump back up here to both of these. If you look, they both have the word bacteria in them. This one's called archaebacteria, and this one's just eubacteria. If you look at this word here, it's archae, that's Latin, and it actually means something from the past. So think about the word archaic. If you've ever heard that word before, if you say something's archaic, it means it's really old. Well, this is the bacteria here that likes the exports, okay? It's an extremist, okay? This bacteria can live in just about anywhere. And it's in a kingdom of extremist bacteria found in domain Archaea, which is just a group, and these cells do not have a nucleus, and they are ancient cells. These cells can live almost anywhere. These cells can live, and it's called Archaebacteria because the bacteria can live in environments that scientists believe could be millions of years old. It can live in extreme heat. It can live in extreme cold. It can live in all sorts of different situations. So this is the cockroach kind of. It's been around for a long time. All right. It's Archaebacteria. Over here we have Eubacteria. And this one is a kingdom of bacteria that we encounter every day. And it's found in the domain of bacteria. Now, this kind of bacteria is the stuff that we use this stuff to protect against. Okay? Lots of this bacteria, the eubacteria, lots of these bacteria can make us sick. However, some of these bacteria in this domain can actually help us. Things such as penicillin are made from bacteria found in this group. So this bacteria can be helpful to humans, but it can also get humans in a lot of trouble. So these are the vocabulary words that we're going to be looking at for this unit. I know that was a ton of vocabulary words all at once. So if you haven't done this yet, please make sure that you get these into your journal. Even if you just print, I know that some of you are just really struggling and you really don't like to cut, color, glue, any of that, then just make sure you've printed this. In the past, we had those pages at the beginning. I was trying to find one here. Like this. We had these pages that give us the information. Well, for this section, we don't have that. We just have the vocabulary words. So make sure that you hang on to these. It's super, super important. Okay, so let's move on and look at the next little section here. And I put this on the next page of my notebook. I put this on page 19. And it goes together this very similar way that the other one did. You cut on the black lines. Once again, I would use the ones that are already completed. Look at all this text that is supposed to go in here. I had a really hard time. I hand wrote it in mine. Oh, actually, mine I used these fill in the blank ones, and it was really, really difficult. So I would use the ones that are pre-printed. You cut them apart. You glue this bottom one down, and then you just glue this little top right here. It says glue tools of classification here. So you put a little strip of glue there and just put that one right on top of that one, and you end up with this. And it's just another little flippy book. And it talks about the different tools of classification. Now, there's also a section in the book from K-12 that talks about tools of classification. And in the book from K-12, let's see here, I thought I had it bookmarked. I don't see it. Okay. The book includes a very important tool that we don't have in our little flip chart here, the microscope. We couldn't do any of this without having a microscope, because some of this stuff we couldn't figure out if it's 1 cell, 2 cells, a billion cells. So we need a microscope. So I do want to point out that that's not on this sheet, and it really should be. So looking at this, these are the three. I told you that we would kind of look at these couple of words again. I really want you to focus on the dichotomous key and the binomial nomenclature. This cladogram, we'll talk about that one in a minute. But let's start here with the binomial nomenclature. They even give you some examples here on the front. This poor little bird, it looks like a little balloon. There we go. They are showing us here the Latin words and how they're put together in this binomial nomenclature. So look at this. They put together the word small and mouth. So microstoma. Then this one has 3 feathers on its head, which means tri. And then penny would be feathers. And then it's on its head, cephalus. So this bird gets the name Microstoma tripennicephalus. So all of these words actually have meanings in Latin. So that's a huge name for that poor little bird there. But this is what binomial nomenclature is all about. And the little piece of introduction in here tells you that binomial nomenclature is the two-name naming system developed by Carolus Linnaeus for classifying organisms. Latin or Greek language is used in order to reduce confusion that is often caused when using common names. Because what if I said the word dog? Well, here in the United States and in our culture, a dog would usually be something that you keep as a pet, but how would I refer to maybe something that's more a relative to a wolf? So that could be really confusing to people. So they put these Latin words together to name different animals. It says names of newly found organisms are created based on physical or behavioral characteristics. The name of a person who founded it or a person the founder wishes to name the organism after, or the location in which the organism was discovered. The two names consist of the genus, which is always capitalized, and the species, which is lowercase. Both words are either underlined or italicized. So what that means, if we were writing these names correctly, you see over here where they name this little bird, this is written in italics. It means that the little letters kind of slant to the side. So and it shows that the first name, the genus, so think about this like your first and last name. Its first name is the genus, and it's always capitalized. Its last name, or the second name, is not capitalized. So just something interesting to know about binomial nomenclature. Okay, so dichotomous keys, and we are going to look more at these in a different activity. But these are fun, and this kind of shows you an example here. So you might have something that said, is it living or non-living? If it's living, you would go to page 2. If it's non-living, you would go to viruses. And so that's kind of how a dichotomous key works. It's like a choose your own adventure, and you keep going down until you get to what it is. And it says that it's a tool to help identify unknown organisms like bacteria, protists, fungi, plants, and animals. It's made up of a series of paired statements. So it's kind of an either-or situation. Is it this or is it this? That the user must choose between until coming to the correct name of the organism. Dichotomous means divided into two distinct parts. So it makes sense that these keys have two choices for each step the user takes. So we will continue. We're going to look at a couple of activities with dichotomous keys. They're really, really neat about how you can find things. Now, this one here in the middle is called a cladogram. These are not used as frequently as they used to be. I will read through these because I want to make a note here. It says a cladogram is a branching diagram that is used for showing evolutionary relationships. Okay, the word evolutionary, some of you hear that, and I know because there's a lot of people, that is a family choice. If you believe that or you don't believe that, that's a family choice. This kind of evolution that they're talking about is more based on animal adaptations. And that's why I wish they had used a different word here. I wish they had used the word adaptations in this. And it says each branch is called a taxon, while the locations where the branch intersects the main diagram is called a node. So this one here is more just kind of for your information so you know it's out there. We are not going to focus on this one at all. We are going to look at the dichotomous key, and that's where we're going to spend the majority of our time. Okay, so, oops, sorry, I'm trying not to take you guys on a roller coaster ride here. All right, and then the last little section that I want to go over with you in your notebook is this one, and this is a fun one. And this one was really easy to do. So I told you that there's different levels of classifications. And so we can group things in different ways. Well, we can start way up here at the top with the domain something is in. So when we start classifying things, we might split them up into domains. From there, we could split them into kingdoms, which we looked at those 6 kingdoms. Is it animal, plant, fungi, protist, eubacteria, or archaebacteria. So we looked at the different kingdoms. Within each of those kingdoms, we can split them down even further. We can group things even further into phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. We are used to using usually the genus. Oops, I'm off the camera. Sorry. The genus and species is what we normally are used to using to refer to to different living things. We're going to continue talking about these, but I have a funny mnemonic that I put here in the middle, and on the one that's printed, I think I put a different one, but this one was Dear King Philip came over for good spaghetti. I think I put grilled squash on the other one. You can come up with your own way of remembering the order of these classifications, the levels of classification. I am sorry, I'm trying not to swing you around there. To put this one together, this one did take quite a bit of cutting, I won't lie, because you cut out along all of the black, and snipping around these little things is kind of time consuming. And then you fold them all in on the dotted line, and then you glue just the triangle here. You put glue on the back of it and glue it down so these little guys can flip-flop over. And you see on this one, I did put Dear King Philip came over for grilled squash. Grilled squash, that does not sound too great. But if that is what Dear King Philip wants, I guess he can have it. All right. So those are the basic things that are going to get us started. I know that was a whole lot of information. That was sort of the overview of everything that we're going to be talking about for the next couple of weeks. So make sure, please, that you get these into your notebook. So this was page 18 for the vocabulary. And like I said, please save yourself some time and use use the ones that are already printed, because trying to get all of the text in there is really, really tricky. It took me quite a while to get that in there. Then on page 19, I had the tools of classification. If you want to also add up here somewhere, microscope, because that's definitely a tool that is used. And then page 20 is this little flip-flap chart. All right. So by Thursday, please have these in your binder, and please go and find your box from K-12 that had your science stuff in it and dig out this book. If you can't find the book, ask your learning coach. Maybe they put it on a shelf somewhere, and if your learning coach can't find it, let me know and I can check the shipment labels to see if perhaps it was left out of your shipment. So, alrighty. I hope you guys all have a great afternoon. Tomorrow you'll be doing the ELA map test. So I will see you in Miss Christensen's class tomorrow morning to take care of that. And I hope you guys have a great afternoon, and I will see you later, alligators. Bye.